we'll do the live thing first. Like, hey everybody, welcome back to the Bigmark podcast. It's me, your host, Bigmark. If it's your first time watching, welcome. If not, welcome back. Like I always say, if you ever wanted to reach out to the podcast, feel free. We always want to hear from you. We want to hear if you got new ideas for episodes, new episodes for ideas. If you ever wanted to let us know how you feel about the podcast, hit us up in the comments. Again, hit us up in the DMs, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at the Bigmark Pod or at the Bigmark Podcast. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your support. If you want to support the podcast, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/thebigmarkpod, or just tell a friend. It's the best thing you can do. We can help grow this podcast overnight. If you tell one friend, we can double it just like that. So thank you all for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. You guys are the best. It's why I do this. And last week, I was talking to my buddy B-Rye, and he informed me, which, I probably should have timed it up better, but fuck it. Last week, June 12th, 2024 was the anniversary of the Doc Ellis no-no. 1970, what is that? 54 years? Damn, son. 54 years. Holy shit balls. No. Yeah. I don't know. If my math is incorrect, fuck it. I suck. No, that's it. So, Doc Ellis, baseball pitcher, famous baseball pitcher, played for the Pittsburgh Pirates in the 70s. Very different time for baseball, very different time for sports. But he threw a really famous no-hitter. I don't know how many no-hitters he threw in his entire career, but this was a very famous one. For all of our listeners who don't know what a no-hitter is, it's a term from baseball. Which refers to a no-hit game. So if you throw a no-hitter, it means you throw a no-hit game where a team does not record a hit through conventional methods. So recording a hit in baseball is, you strike the ball with your bat and then you reach a base and then that's a hit. But that never happened. If that never happens in a game, that's a no-hitter. The major leagues define it as if a team goes all 9 innings without scoring a hit, that's a no-hitter. A pitcher who prevents the opposing team from achieving a hit is thereby said to have thrown a no-hitter. And this is the story of Doc Ellis's no-hitter. Based mostly off an interview on NPR with Doc Ellis himself, that is wonderfully accompanied by an animation done by James Blagden. Please check that out. It's on YouTube. Doc Ellis No. It's fucking hilarious. Please look it up after you've watched this. If you're watching on YouTube, it's going to be a super easy click. Go check it out. So let's go back to June 1970. Again, very different time. Doc Ellis lands in San Diego. He's a traveling athlete, so they're all over the world. So he lands in San Diego, and he knows his way around San, and drops a hit of LSD. Now, the acid back in these days was very different than the acid today. If anyone's ever done acid recently, unless you get like really, really good stuff, quote unquote, really good stuff. There even that being said, there really isn't even the acid that used to be available back in the day, that doesn't even really exist to today. In today's world, the chemists aren't out there doing their thing. They all went to jail or died or, focused on other drugs or whatever it is. But that kind of acid doesn't really exist. So this is like pretty fucking powerful shit. So he drops some acid on his way to his friend's girlfriend's house. Again, he knows where he's at. He's heading back. Shows up at her door, knocks on the door. She opens the door. She obviously realizes that he's fucking tripping balls. And she's like, "What's wrong with you?" And he's like, "I'm high as a Georgia pine," which I thought is one of the fucking best lines of all time. And I've used it myself quite a few times. So, Doc continues on his day into the night, hanging out, tripping balls on acid. The next day, or what Ellis thought was the next day, his friend's girlfriend wakes him up and says, "Hey man, you have to pitch today. Like, you got to wake up." and he had no idea what she was saying. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like I don't have to fucking pitch today. Like, what do you, that's tomorrow. Like, the game's tomorrow. And he also woke up earlier that day and took more acid. So as she grabs the paper, shows him the sports section, and it says Pittsburgh Pirates starting pitcher, you sucker. It's fucking hilarious. You got to check it out in the animation. It like the show is like, you sucker. But he looks at the paper and realizes he's the fucking starting pitcher. So he gets over to the airport and flies into the game. So now it's June 12th, 1970. It's the 1 week anniversary of the anniversary. If you're listening to this when it first comes out on Wednesday, like all the podcasts, check them out Wednesdays, every Wednesday. So at the time, Dexamyl, or Christmas trees, and Benzedrine, bennies, were really popular drugs. Doc was saying about 90% of the major leagues were on Dexamyls back in the day, which was like a stimulant. And he ends up going to find a dealer who, there used to be just dealers that would like hang around the stadium and, you know, sell their fucking drugs. And, you know, all these athletes weren't necessarily getting everything from the team doctors. They had to find other ways. So these dealers would just hang around stadiums, and you saw these guys every week, right? Like, they'd be fucking coming through and you knew who it was and all this shit. Like, it's pretty fucking hilarious. But anyways, after the day that Doc Ellis forgot, he's warming up, and as he's warming up that day for the game, a mist rolls in at the stadium. So there's kind of like a rainy mist that whole day at the stadium, which, you know, might have contributed to things. You know, obviously different weather patterns, you know, can affect how players play, especially rain with baseball, right? Because like you can rain out a game. So, you know, football doesn't matter really unless there's lightning. But with baseball, like if it starts to rain, the game's going to be canceled. So who knows? Maybe a lot of guys are like, this game's getting canceled, so their head wasn't completely in it. There's a bunch of reasons. I'm not taking away anything from Doc, but, you know, the other team fucking gave up a no-hitter too, right? So you got to look at it that way. Anyway, Ellis's teammates and the opposing team knew that he was high, but they didn't really know what he was high on because they didn't know anything about acid. Again, this is the 70s. They just knew what they saw on TV with like rock stars and hippies. They didn't really think that that's a drug that you're going to do. And again, it's funny. It's like acid and mushrooms. They're kind of those drugs where they're kind of one of the last drugs that people like think that you're on, especially if they don't do drugs themselves. Honestly, most people probably just think you're drunk first, like if you're just doing weird shit or baked, if you're like laughing or whatever. But like, unless they like look into your eyes and see that they're fucking pinned or like giant fucking saucers, you don't fucking know what really drug unless you know the drugs, right? That's what I'm saying. So all the people out there, all the baseball players didn't know what the fuck he was on, but they just knew he was fucked up. Ellis said he couldn't see the hitters. He just knew if they were on the left or the right side, which again might be another reason why he fucking recorded this no-hitter. If he starts fucking throwing wild pitches at people, they might have been fucking scared to go up and actually try to hit. So they just fucking let him throw. Anyway, the catcher had to put reflective tape on his fingers so Doc could see the calls when he was fucking behind the plate and shit. Sometimes he would jump out of the way of like a slow infield hit, like a little like, you know, off the bat hit towards him. He'd jump out of the way because he thought it was coming at him fast. He thought the ball was big sometimes. He thought the ball was tiny in his glove. He tried to catch the ball with two hands at one point because he thought he was so big. Or thought the ball was so big. At one point, he covered first base and he caught the ball and tagged the base out all in one motion. He said, "Ooh, I just made a touchdown," which I thought is fucking hilarious. But it wasn't pretty. Again, like I mentioned, you know, he's walking people, hitting batters, throwing in the dirt. So people might have been like a little bit kind of like, what the fuck's going on? But one of his teammates is like, you got a no going. And Ellis was like, I could feel my teammates starting to get angry at this one guy who was saying, you got, because you're not supposed to tell a pitcher he's throwing a no-hitter while he's throwing a no-hitter. It's just an old superstition thing. He said he could feel all the people talking about that and shit. Must have been crazy. He said it was easy to pitch on acid because he was so used to self-medicating to deal with the fear. He said the fear of losing, the fear of winning. You know, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. You have a lot of pressure. The city of Pittsburgh, at least, you know, as representing them in America's pastime. You know, and also he's like, I was in the major leagues, right? Like, you want to be there. All the perks and all the fun stuff and the money and the fun and the playing a sport for fucking living. You want to stay there as long as you fucking can. So he goes, what do I need? What do I need to stay here? Which brings up a completely interesting point, because all it took is one more strike and Doc solidified that no-hitter and threw a fucking no-hitter on acid as fuck and drops another hit as his teammates are carrying him away. That was just in the animation, spoiler alert, but who knows, maybe he did. But again, I think that brings us to this interesting point where, you know, you talk about drugs in sport, and it's always about steroids, and it's always about cheating, and it's always about this and that. You don't talk about the drugs that some of these guys do just for themselves, right? You know, there's fucking painkillers that people get hooked on. There's all these other stimulants and concentration drugs and beta blockers probably, and all this shit that like helps with nerves and that no one necessarily knows about, because some of these guys, it's just fucking personal. It's just like what they have. And sometimes their brain chemistry is just kind of fucking set up to deal with that shit. But that's the thing. You don't necessarily think how fucking zooted some of these guys are. And even on the drugs that are like legal. I'm not necessarily talking about drugs that are illegal, but like, fuck, man, like, you think that this shit doesn't still exist? No fucking way. This shit definitely still exists. It's just in different avenues, different channels. All that shit fucking exists. And these players are under tremendous pressure. Some of these players have their whole families back home, bought their parents' homes, or, you know, they came from low income areas where they have to give back, or they have to pay off. Well, hopefully most of them were on sports scholarships, but they have to pay off debts and dues and all this stuff that they put aside. You know, the reason why we give all these athletes all this shit is because they willingly chose to step outside themselves and become athletes. And yes, there's certain athletes that do it for selfish reasons, and maybe inherently it is, but loving the sport and dedicating yourself to a sport is recognized by these people, because we realize you've given up your life for this sport. You've given up your youth, you've given up your body, you've given up your time, you've sacrificed relationships, you sacrificed experiences upon experiences, because you knew that was going to affect how you were going to play on a fucking field in a game that doesn't really matter. But it does matter to people who are in it, and it does matter to people who dedicate their lives to that, because it is a world that exists within reality, but you can dedicate your life to it and you can live in it, and it becomes your everything, yes. But there are values to it. There are other things, but the dark side sometimes of it is what you do to stay there, and the sacrifices you make and the sacrifices you take, right? And again, Doc thought it was easy to fucking throw a Major League Baseball game on acid, because that's how many drugs he was doing. So, and it wasn't just because he likes to party. It's dealing with that stress, dealing with that pressure, dealing with that heaviness that comes with, again, like you said, it's not just the losing, it's the winning. You do well and you fucking become the championship. You become the champion. Everyone's fucking coming for your head. It's lonely at the top. It's lonely at the top, and there's nowhere but down. And your body ages and things change. No one plays sports forever. You know, athletes are the modern day warriors, right? You know, and that's also all wrapped in it. You're giving this dedication of your life, this sacrifice of yourself. Some of these guys take liberties, because sometimes your body isn't a temple. Sometimes it's an amusement park. So enjoy the ride. Anyway, that's the Doc Ellis No. Go check out that animation by James Blagden. Blogden. I don't know. Sorry, buddy. Jamesy boy. Anyway, check it out. Super fucking funny. It's quick. It's like 5 minutes. But shout out Doc Ellis. Shout out Pittsburgh Pirates. Shout out baseball. Shout out acid. All right, everybody. Thank y'all for listening. We'll see you soon. Love y'all. Baseball, YouTubes, Patreon. Peace.